Xenoblade Chronicles X is getting a definitive edition for the Switch, much like the original Xenoblade Chronicles. This is huge news for fans of the game, which means it's huge news for me. This game is something special, and it isn't necessarily for the traditional reasons that you might think of for a JRPG. It isn't because the story is incredible, because it's not bad, but it just doesn't have the best main narrative. It isn't because the characters are 10 out of 10, because while they're interesting and fun to learn about, there have been better casts in the series. The reason is because Xenoblade Chronicles X has an incredible world with a ton of places to see. Fun combat is maybe the only game that I can think of that lets you explore a huge world in a mech that is fully customizable and can fly. Exploring is super fun in Xenoblade Chronicles X, though you'll have to have a little bit of patience because you don't get the mech at the start, it comes a bit later, and the flight isn't unlocked until much later than that. It also has really solid combat, which incorporates the mech into it after a while, forcing you to think about how you're going to tackle enemies. There are a lot of different enemies lurking about in the world that can come out of nowhere, and that you'll need to utilize your mech to beat. Though, I suppose it might be possible to grind super hard and outscale at least a few of the giant bosses out there on foot. But of course, the most important reason that this is a big deal is that Xenoblade Chronicles X has been trapped on the Wii U for coming close to a decade at this point. The Wii U was one of Nintendo's worst performing consoles in sales, especially after the huge success of the Wii, so the fact that a huge amount of people have never played the game, that makes it hard to tell whether it would be worth continuing the Xenoblade X style for Monolith Soft. So that means they've never really pushed that side of things. They've kind of stuck more to the main series format, where I think I would like them to try a little bit more towards Xenoblade Chronicles X. You can already see in the trailer some of the differences in the game. The faces have been changed quite significantly, you can tell right away. There are different textures, the graphics have clearly had a facelift. Obviously the resolution has been upped, but it isn't completely clear as of yet the extent of those upgrades. I've always wanted a sequel to Xenoblade Chronicles X because I think that if you could combine the good parts of the mainline series with the expansive exploration and incredible world of Xenoblade X, at least for me, that would be the ideal game. Though, maybe give me a little bit of a happier ending once in a while, Mr. Takahashi. Think about it. Regardless, it's very exciting to think that Xenoblade Chronicles X will finally get a chance to shine, and it leaves possibilities more open because this means that they decided it was worthwhile enough to push to a new fanbase. For a while, it was looking like they were just going to pretend Xenoblade Chronicles X never existed, they weren't going to do anything with it at all. For people that are coming to Xenoblade Chronicles X for the first time, I'll give you a few tips to make the game fun for you. This is a slow burn, so don't expect to be completely engrossed from moment one, though you could be. There are a lot of systems that are not immediately opened up for you from the start. There are entire land masses that you can't necessarily get to from the start, so have some patience and enjoy the ride. It's really the moment to moment that is great about this game. A lot of the enjoyment comes from finding new enemies out in the world that you might not expect. And speaking of, you have to find a way to accept that you're going to get blasted by a huge monster that is out of your league. So make sure to save. It isn't always clear what you're going to run into, and Xenoblade X has many of the mini-bosses and super bosses that Xenoblade is known for, so be prepared. And a difference between Xenoblade Chronicles X and other Xenoblade games is it isn't as clear when you're going to find one of these massive, huge super bosses, so just be careful, that's all I'm saying. Make sure to check for affinity missions in various places around the city when that opens up. This is going to require you to explore a bit. It'll take some time for some of them to open up, so you've got to check back and check back often. Affinity missions can be some of the most fun missions in the game. They have a lot of story to them, a lot of character development, but they can take a bit of work to unlock. For many of them, you have to have specific characters in your party, which may not be characters that open up until certain points. You need to be a certain level, and you need to have a certain amount of affinity with the character that each affinity mission is focusing on. So, to gain affinity, you might need to do a bit of busy work, such as gathering quests, but it isn't too bad, so you won't be stuck in an endless grind or anything like that. It might just require, again, a little bit of patience. So, there you go, a few tips to get you prepped. We won't be getting Xenoblade Chronicles X until March of next year, 2025, so if and when they show a bit more of what the definitive edition is like, I will almost certainly be speaking more about it at that point, so subscribe to see a bit more in the future, and other news and nonsense surrounding JRPGs and RPGs as a whole. Thanks for watching.